Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of the View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Sunny Hostin thought her day couldn't get any worse until Gutfeld and Tyrus arrived, armed with flamethrowers of sarcasm. What began as a rough patch quickly turned into a full-blown comedy roast. Her husband's $450 million court scandal? That was just the appetizer. What followed was a searing session of humiliation, served hot and unrelenting. Tyrus pulled no punches, Gutfeld landed every jab, and Sunny's stunned silence, Oscar-worthy. But the real kicker? A bombshell detail from the courtroom that sent everything spiraling. You won't believe just how deep this chaos goes.
About 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system, and doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance, and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she is.
Sunny Hostin has spent years on The View presenting herself as the Supreme Court of daytime TV, gavel in one hand, moral high ground in the other. She doesn't just share opinions. She delivers verdicts. One misstep, and you're exiled from the brunch table. But this week, the self-proclaimed queen of legal righteousness found herself in the hot seat, caught in the glare of a $450 million courtroom disaster headlined by none other than her own husband.
Man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racists on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day, that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, Emily.
Cue the irony, cue the popcorn, and cue Gutfeld and Tyrus firing up their sarcasm engines like they're headlining a roast on Mount Olympus. For years, Sunny Hostin has built her brand on being perpetually outraged, offended, incensed, flabbergasted, whatever it takes to seize the moral high ground on a talk show that often feels more like an emotional cage match than a conversation. But now, with her husband allegedly knee-deep in a financial fiasco that makes FTX look like a church bake sale, suddenly it's all about privacy and due process. Funny how that works.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from...
When someone else is in the hot seat, it's all righteous fury and barely concealed contempt. But when it's her own husband under fire, crickets. The loudest legal voice on The View has suddenly found a deep appreciation for the art of silence. Bravo! Now enter stage right. Gutfeld and Tyrus, two men packing enough sarcasm to power a small nation. And you better believe they're not passing up the chance to sink their teeth into this hypocrisy sandwich.
Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
The timing couldn't be juicier. Gutfeld, who's made a career out of skewering media hypocrisy with the wit of a stand-up comic and the precision of a sniper, practically hosted a celebration on air. And Tyrus? He might as well have brought marshmallows to roast over the smoldering ruins of Sunny Hostin's credibility. Let's talk about this $450 million scandal, shall we? According to swirling reports and some of the most animated social media threads in recent memory, Sunny's husband is allegedly at the center of a courtroom catastrophe so massive, it makes Enron look like a typo. We're talking accusations of financial mismanagement, maybe even fraud, but hey, who's keeping track? Certainly not Sunny, who suddenly has less to say about legal accountability than a glitching Alexa. It's as if someone muted her inner prosecutor and swapped in a dial tone. And it's not just the scale of the scandal, it's the poetic irony. This is a woman who's made a name dissecting others' legal drama with the enthusiasm of a hawk spotting fresh roadkill. When a Republican faces a lawsuit, Sunny's already halfway through her closing argument. But when her own house is engulfed in legal flames, now's not the time to speculate. That's not just ironic, it's practically performance art. Naturally, Gutfeld didn't let the moment pass. He launched into a segment that was less political commentary and more of a full-blown roast battle, and Sunny was the guest of dishonor.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So
if hypocrisy were an Olympic sport, Sunny Hostin just took home the gold. Greg Gutfeld dissected the double standard with the glee of a kid unwrapping Christmas presents, while Tyrus stood in the background, metaphorical machete in hand sharpened and ready. And swing it he did, with the laid-back swagger of someone who's endured one-to-many episodes of daytime TV. Tyrus unleashed zingers that didn't just call out the scandal, they shredded the smugness, the self-righteousness, and the crumbling credibility that came with it. When the self-declared queen of condescension loses her crown in a scandal this colossal, you can count on Tyrus to show up with a velvet pillow to collect the fallen jewels. And let's not overlook The View's royal court. The rest of the panel, those tireless champions of progressive outrage, fell suspiciously silent. Joy Behar, usually loud enough to register on the Richter scale, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Whoopi Goldberg, the usual moral compass of the table, barely mustered a shrug. Apparently, when it's Sunny's name on the legal docket, the outrage meter suddenly goes flat. This, from the same crew that once staged a multi-segment meltdown over a conservative politician mispronouncing a word.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball.
A $450 million scandal involving one of their own? Suddenly, The View crew finds everything complicated, full of nuance, context, and conveniently timed silence. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. It exploded. Social media lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Memes came fast, roasting Sunny Hostin with the kind of relentless fire usually reserved for celebrity meltdowns and failed crypto launches. Twitter didn't just drag her, it left skid marks. Greg Gutfeld, always ready to pounce, turned the moment into a broader takedown of media elitism, the reflex to preach accountability until the mirror turns inward. The moral high ground's a great place to stand until it crumbles under your own feet, he said with deadpan precision. And suddenly, the show built on truth, transparency, and loud opinions had nothing to say. Selective laryngitis, anyone? Then, Tyrus stepped in, delivering a roast so dry it should have come with a cactus. He didn't just question Sunny's legal credibility, he scorched it. The idea of her dishing out legal advice to viewers while allegedly penning PR band-aids for her husband's financial fiasco? Laughable. The only thing more chaotic than the accusations was Sunny's internal compass spinning like a weather vane in a hurricane of hypocrisy.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I wouldn't have even actually not give her any, is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what, like, they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
And the cherry on top, The View pretended like nothing happened. Not a segment, not a word. They can dedicate 20 minutes to dissecting Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriends, but not a single second to the 450 million elephant charging through Sunny Hostin's personal life. Was it restraint? Or was it cowardice? You decide. Greg Gutfeld, ever the master of timing, wrapped up his segment with what might be the most poetic irony TV has seen in years. With a straight face and a glint of mischief in his eye, he extended a cordial and completely sarcastic invitation for Sunny to come on his show and talk about the value of accountability. The sarcasm? Rich. The irony? Delicious. The shade? Strong enough to require sunglasses indoors. And Tyrus? No words needed. He simply leaned into the camera and flashed that signature smirk, the one that says, "We told you so." But here's the thing. This isn't just about Sunny. This scandal is a mirror reflecting a much bigger hypocrisy parade marching through mainstream media. These pundits love to cast themselves as moral crusaders, quoting laws like scripture, demanding justice with all the drama of a Shakespearean play. But the moment the spotlight hits their own skeletons, the courtroom vanishes, and suddenly, it's all theater. Their commandments? Turns out they're written on cocktail napkins or, worse, toilet paper.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
Sunny's defenders argue she shouldn't be held accountable for her husband's actions, and sure, on paper, that sounds fair. But this is the same woman who dissected the families of political opponents like she was auditioning for CSI, political hypocrisy. Now, suddenly, she's asking for context? That's not just a double standard, that's a double-decker of irony, served with a side of denial. The fallout? It's just getting started. More details will likely come to light, and Sunny might have to do more than just pout through commercial breaks. A public statement? A brief leave of absence? Or maybe just a subtle adjustment to her perpetually smug resting face. Whatever happens, the credibility damage is already catastrophic. Let's be real, The View was never exactly a beacon of journalistic integrity. But this scandal, it pulled back the curtain on whatever shred of credibility was left and revealed a group of panelists scrambling to protect their own interests like a daytime mafia. If you tuned in expecting a dose of self-awareness, think again. These are the same people who could trip over their own contradictions and still blame Republicans. The likelihood of them reflecting, admitting their hypocrisy, or laughing at their own absurdity, about as probable as Sunny presenting her husband's bail paperwork live on air.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
If The View had a mute button for awkward scandals, Sunny Hostin hit it like her reputation depended on it, and, in this case, it absolutely did. Suddenly, the queen of legal monologues, interruptions, and unsolicited law school reenactments decided that the time for strategic silence had come. The same woman who could filibuster her way through a 7-second clip of a squirrel sneezing on Capitol Hill somehow forgot how to speak when the topic turned to a certain high-profile 450 million courtroom drama involving her very own husband. Coincidence? Sure. And pigs just started a tech company. Gone were the smug cross-examinations. Gone were the legal buzzwords no one asked for. Sunny, the eternal justice warrior, had transformed into Sunny, the human screensaver. Viewers watched in stunned disbelief as she perfected the art of slowly blinking and rearranging her note cards into what looked like a plea deal if you squinted. It was like watching a defense attorney play charades during a tax audit. Every sideways glance, every suspicious sip from her mug, every twitchy shuffle screamed, "Please, for the love of God, do not ask me about the massive felon-shaped elephant tap dancing through this segment." And her body language? Let's just say she was giving full-on courtroom mime. Arms crossed tighter than a tax loophole, shoulders so tense they could slice deli meat. One moment, she's nodding like a bobblehead at a law conference. The next, she's zoning out so intensely, you'd swear she was counting ceiling tiles to write a legal brief.
She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Somewhere between Whoopi's eye rolls and Joy's derailed tangents, Sunny sat frozen, as if she'd just seen her husband's bail terms scrawled on her cue cards. And the best part? When things got spicy, when the conversation even nudged 10 degrees toward corruption, fraud, or high-profile embarrassment, Sunny developed an almost magical ability to stare into the abyss. She had that look on her face like she was trying to telepathically disappear. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Viewers saw it. Twitter saw it. Greg Gutfeld saw it. And Gutfeld? He doesn't even blink. Let's be real, Sunny's usual move is to hijack a conversation mid-sentence with a "actually, that's not how due process works." But now, the only thing she's lawyering up is her facial expression. Why? Because, oops, it turns out the due process in question is happening to her own husband. In the courtroom, the interruptions that once made her the loudest voice in the room have now turned into the ghosts haunting her credibility. She sits, she blinks, she drinks from her oversized mug like it's filled with vanishing cream. Meanwhile, viewers are on the edge of their seats, wondering if she'll finally snap and yell, "Objection," at her own reflection. The silence? It's not golden, it's desperate. A last-ditch attempt to dodge, deflect, and outlast a scandal that's too big to hide.
Anna went in a different direction, but I love the fact that, Manny is younger and he's
How
very
much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he? Like a month or a year or 10 years or 5 years?
It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think that's it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He
Exactly.
throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy.
Sorry, Sunny, but karma doesn't care how many cross-examinations you've conducted. Still, Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus provided the catharsis America didn't know it needed. In a world where double standards rule and sanctimonious finger-pointing is practically an Olympic sport, watching the mighty stumble is more than satisfying, it's downright therapeutic. Will Sunny recover? Probably. The View has a long shelf life for its host scandals as long as they vote the right way. She might even try to rebrand this as a learning experience and deliver a TED Talk titled "When Justice Hits Close to Home." But until then, the memes will keep rolling, the internet will keep laughing, and Gutfeld and Tyrus will keep circling the hypocrisy like vultures with punchlines. Because when you spend your career handing out moral judgments, it's only a matter of time before the gavel swings back. And in Sunny's case, it swung hard enough to knock the smug right off her highlight reel. So, the next time The View serves up another moral lecture, remember, even the loudest voices can choke on their own script, especially when Gutfeld and Tyrus are holding the receipts and the punchlines. If this is how Sunny handles a legal crisis, we can't wait to see how she handles daytime ratings.